Hey again. Okay, we're jumping right back into it. We're going to cover section 8.2, water uptake, and section 8.3, transpiration, because they kind of go hand in hand, and you'll see why here in just a second. So let's get to it. The root hair cell. So when we're looking at a plant, most of y'all know plants have roots. They grow down into the ground in the soil. At the end of the roots, we have a very important structure called the root hair cell. Now, these are single-celled extensions from the epidermis that are attached to the ends of the roots, and they grow between the soil particles and help absorb water and minerals from the soil. So this is one of the adaptations of plants that allows it to really anchor itself down into the soil and absorb as much of just everything that it needs, the water and the mineral ions that it needs to absorb to remain a healthy plant. Now, water enters these root hair cells by osmosis. So think back to your unit on unit 3 with osmosis, where we have too much water in the soil and not enough water in the plant. That water is going to move into the plant and be absorbed to be used by the plant. So that's what it means when you see in this note here about the higher water potential than the cytoplasm of the root hair cell. So if there's more water in the soil, it's going to move where there's less water. If that area is less water in the plant, it's coming into the plant. So specifically when we look at it, the root hair cells tend to look like these little key structures is kind of how I think of it. It's still got your cell wall, still has your vacuole. Something that they don't need is chloroplasts because they're not photosynthesizing. They are down here in the soil. So just keep that in mind. And this would be at the roots, and then it helps water get absorbed from the roots into the stem and out through the leaves. Now, there's a very important aspect of root hair cells that make them useful. They increase the surface area for cells significantly, because if you can come look at this picture, you can see that every time this little extension comes out, the cells are larger than, let's say, the cell behind it, because this increases surface area. The more surface area that you have, the higher the rate of absorption of water by osmosis, because there's more area for water to come in. Okay? Now, when we think about the pathway of water from the root all the way up to the leaf, this little line, this little line right here is going to be very important. So water is going to enter at the root hair cell. It will then enter the root cortex cells, then go into the xylem, because remember, xylem absorbs water and those mineral ions, and then move to the leaf mesophyll cells. Okay, so this is the order. It's going to be really important. There's a lot of test questions that ask, what is the order that water enters into a plant? Root hair cell, root cortex cell, xylem, and then the leaf mesophyll cells. Okay? All right, now let's look. This is going to be a lab, sort of. I've got some celery at home growing in my garden. I'll bring in and kind of show you how water is absorbed by using food color. So we'll look at that in class. But let's go ahead and jump into transpiration, because how does this water get pulled from the roots up through a plant out into the leaves? And this is done by transpiration. So water travels up the xylem from the roots into the leaves of the plant to replace the water that's been lost due to transpiration. So transpiration, by definition, which will be in your notes, is the loss of water vapor from plant leaves by evaporation of water at the surfaces of the mesophyll cells, followed by the diffusion of water vapor through the stomata. So we're going to have water come in at the roots, be pulled up through the stem, out into the leaves. Now, water vapor is going to diffuse, because remember, it's a vapor now, it's going to diffuse out of the leaf through the stomata. That constant pulling almost is like, okay, use my coffee again. I am sucking coffee through a straw. Literally, we call this the transpiration stream, because water is pulled from the roots up through the stem and out the leaf, like you would drink a drink and suck, the Coke or sweet tea or whatever. For me, it's my coffee, up through the straw. So it's the same concept of how water is moving throughout a plant. Now, we've got some adaptations of xylem here that you should be kind of familiar with to help that happen, because we covered that in the last video. This just shows you an image of that. You can pause it right here and look at that and see everything in the movement of that. But something else I want y'all to look at is just the What is transpiration, important for? Transporting mineral ions. That stream and that pool helps transport and pull up the mineral ions from the soil. It helps keep the plant cells turgid, which is very firm and helps that plant stay erect and not wilt and die. Provides water to leaf cells for photosynthesis. And it helps to keep leaves cool. That's another important aspect. If you've ever been to someone's at-home garden, one of my favorite things to do I guess because I'm dorky and have a garden, is to go in the middle of a hot summer. And when I'm reaching for my tomatoes in my thick, heavy garden, you can feel it. It's boiling hot on the outside. But when I reach under a plant to grab a tomato, it's so cool under there. And a lot of this has to do with transpiration and that water vapor coming out of those leaves and keeping everything under plants really, really cool. So you can do some kind of cool things with gardening with plants that really prefer cooler temperatures, that you can plant underneath other plants and do some cool gardening that way. I would love for y'all to become avid gardeners. So just looking at another tip, evaporation takes place from the surfaces of the spongy film mesocells. The many interconnecting air spaces between these cells and the stomata creates a larger surface area. So here's that idea again. So when you look at the structure of a leaf, and I have one right here, I'll just grab. So remember, this is our structure of the leaf. The spongy mesophil is kind of the air space inside. And then, of course, our stomata were the openings. This is where the water vapor gets to come out. So evaporation can happen more rapidly when the stomata are open. All right. And let's think about we've talked about the stream of, it's literally like a straw pulling the water up through the plant. We can use the term called cohesion, which is creating that continuous column of water up a plant. Then again, that's called the transpiration stream. It creates a tension, almost like a pool. So that's why I say literally think about you pulling your drink up through a straw. And then the rate of transpiration from the leaves increases. Water molecules are pulled up through the xylem vessels quicker. Okay, wilting is something we do cover in this unit, so you might want to pause it right here and just read everything. So if more water evaporates from the leaves of a plant that is available in the soil to move into the root by osmosis, then wilting will occur. And this is when all the cells of the plant are not full of water, so the strength of the cell walls cannot support the plant. So this is when literally there's just not enough water being pulled through. So wilting is when all of the xylem vessels, the structures inside of a plant, cannot uphold the plant, so they're going to wilt. All right, and then we are going to look at several labs tomorrow with how transpiration affects plants specifically, and these labs will just deal with transpiration rates. So temperature and humidity are two really big ones, and we'll look at those labs tomorrow. You also can have transpiration affected by wind speed, light intensity, as well as water supply. All right, so that's where we'll end today. A lot of information, but go ahead, get your notes down, make sure you label everything. If I give you a diagram, we'll check back in with that check for understanding.